You have been to the bank before, you're optimistic, you head to the ATM, slot in your card, and then to withdraw. And then the ATM machine tells you temporarily unable to dispense. Why? Because at that material time, the ATM does not have cash to give you. As a person, as an organization, as a business, as an entrepreneur, as an employee, there are times where you will be temporarily unable to dispense. And it is not a crime. Being broke is a local balance for temporarily being out of dispensable cash. And it happens everywhere. But we are at a time where you are broke and you are refusing to admit to yourself that you are broke, and you don't want people to know that you are broke. I believe that every person, as a matter of life skill, needs to learn how to be broke, because at various points in your life, you are going to find yourself in a position where you are temporarily unable to dispense cash, or you are unable to spend. So in this video, I want us to learn being broke as a life skill, because being broke is not a crime. Acting rich when you are actually broke is the problem. To survive that season where you are temporarily unable to dispense cash, which could be for a number of reasons, there are things that you need to know and you need to do. And number one is to accept your reality. You are broke, you are broke. Pretending otherwise is not going to put money in your pocket. This is important because you cannot solve a problem that you have refused to acknowledge. Stop pretending and face the facts. The second point is prioritize necessities over your lifestyle. When you are broke, you should prioritize your essential needs over maintaining a lifestyle. So that you need to cut down on your wants. You need to cut down on pleasures. You need to cut down on maintaining your lifestyle and just focus on surviving. The third thing I want you to realize is that pride is expensive. You cannot afford pride when you are broke. When you are broke, you need assistance. You need intervention. And wanting to maintain your pride is a luxury that you cannot afford. And the pride here is not just about being able to admit it and even be able to talk about it, but also willingness to also reduce your lifestyle to what is accommodatable. The fourth point I would like to mention is that when you are broke, every naira you spend must have a purpose. You cannot be spending like every other person when you are broke just because you don't want those people to know that you are broke. Those people that you are shy of, you are ashamed of, and you don't want them to know that you are broke, have been broke in their life before. It's not strange to them. So when you are broke, every naira you spend must have a purpose. The fifth point is learn to say, I can't afford it. That simple phrase, I can't afford it, will save you from a lot of troubles. You can't afford it does not mean that you will not afford it. It simply means that at this time, just the same way you go to an ATM tells you temporarily unable to dispense cash. It doesn't mean that that ATM doesn't have the capacity to dispense cash. It means that that ATM doesn't have the cash to dispense at that time. You can come You can go and come back in 1 hour's time and it will be able to dispense cash because there is now cash. You need to learn to say, I can't afford it. Very easy, very simple. It is not complicated. You can't afford it. You can't afford it. So just say it. The sixth point I would like to make here is focusing on income rather than image. One thing I have discovered with people who are broke is that instead of focusing on growing their income, they are rather focused on painting an image, creating an impression that they are not broke. Right? So you have a problem. Instead of focusing on solving the problem, you are rather focused on not wanting people to know that you have the problem. The seventh point I will mention is temporary sacrifices. When you are broke, you need to make certain temporary sacrifices so that you can survive that season. You may want to cut down on your social life. Next is selling non-essential assets. Some of you have properties, you have things, you have items that you bought out of curiosity that you have not used for the past 6 months, you have not used for the past 3 months, and they're not really important to you as you thought they would be. Sell them to get some cash. Next, you can take on extra work, constrain yourself, take on extra shifts if you work on shift, or take on some side hustles to help you generate revenue. Then lastly, you can move to cheaper places. When you are broke, avoid those expensive eateries where you usually go to eat and go to cheaper places. When you are back, you can go back. Temporary sacrifices, very, very important. And the eighth point I would like to make is avoid image laundering. Image laundering is you trying to create an impression in the minds of people, or create an image of yourself in the minds of people that is different from your reality. People are always going to assume things that they want to assume, but you taking extra effort and sometimes even spending your scarce resources on creating that impression is a big mistake that you need to avoid. The balance on your bank account should impress you more than what you think people think about you. Number 9 point is focusing on what you have. There is a difference between being resourceful and having resources. And in most cases, being resourceful is more important than the amount of resources that you have. So you need to be, whenever you know you are broke, return to that your resourceful nature. Look at what you have and focus on the things that you have and see how you can make the best of what you have instead of focusing on what you don't have. Number 10, and finally, is having a recovery plan. Maybe you are sacked from your work, or you lose your contract, whatever it is that made you broke, or you lose your business, or sales are not coming in as it should or as it used to. You need to have a recovery plan. How are you going to come out of that situation, right? So you need to sit down and commit some time into deciding, into figuring out how you are going to come out of that situation. You need to ask yourself, how do I earn? What can I sell? What can I monetize? What expenses can I eliminate? Surviving within that period is very, very important, but recovering from that period is more important. So while it is good for you to put in some survival measures within that period, the goal is not for you to remain broke forever, which is why it is important for you to have plan and find answers to these questions. Finally, when you are broke, the goal is not to look comfortable, rather to do whatever is necessary legally and ethically to recover. Don't forget, desperate times calls for desperate measures, and not just desperate measures, wise desperate measures. Thank you very much for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.